Well, hello there.
Hey,
Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, March the 24th, 2021. Amazing
yay.
year. Amazing, amazing things are happening. I am so grateful that you are all here, and this is being recorded as
A
always,
free call
and it will
Wednesdays.
reside in my YouTube channel. So anytime that anybody wants to go and listen in, they are in my YouTube channel, Laina Orlando, and there you will be able to find every single one of these episodes. And this is just super, super exciting because today, as usual, we have a lot to cover. And today we're going to focus primarily on the psychology, the what has kept us separated from God according to A Course in Miracles. So I'm going to be using one specific lesson, which is lesson number 35. And that lesson, the title of the lesson is My Mind is Part of God's. I Am Very Holy. This is one of the most difficult things for us humans to get, that our mind is joined with God's mind, and that is what makes us holy. Our holiness is because God has imagined us, and because we are made in the image of God, because God imagined us, we can imagine just like God can. So we have the ability to, like a magi, a magician, imagine anything that we want to into manifestation. So understanding how our mind is linked to God's mind is crucial, because that is where the power of creation comes from. Our heart does not create. Our heart gives power to creation to come into manifestation, because our emotions, our love, and all healthy emotion is energy in motion, which means love extending out. When we have, getting an update. Nope, close that one out. When we are connected to God and we are allowing God to flow through us, we are literally allowing energy to be in motion. When we block that energy from being in motion, we create what is known as emotions. So, love is not an emotion. Love is energy, the energy of God, the energy of creation in motion. What we call emotions is energy not in motion. It is energy that it is blocked, and therefore it is preventing the creations that can only be created through love. When we block love, what we create through emotions are blocks that manifest from the frequency that they are at. So, as we have seen in this chart before, if we block love, and we do whenever we're upset, whenever we're angry, whenever we're judging, but we mostly, and it's important to understand, we block love when we don't understand that we are love, that we are loving beings, that that is our true nature. So there is no way to block love when you are aware of what you are and you are consciously in alignment of extending that. But we block love when we forget to acknowledge that we are loving beings. That's what creates fear. So fear is not something that is has been created by God. Fear is a result of blocking our awareness that we are the love of God meant to be in motion. So when we block God's love, when we block the truth of who we are, we create these emotions. This is energy that is not in motion. The denser the block, so the more we're blocking, this is why when you're younger, you don't block quite as strongly, because you don't have so much density. You don't have so many layers blocking you from the truth of who you are. When you get older, as we go into 40s and 50s and 70s, we then are really blocking more severely the density. That's why it's a lot harder for someone to question their thoughts when they're older, because those beliefs are ingrained in who we think we are and what we think is true. That's why we hear the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Now, granted, that is not the case for everybody, because I know a lot of people, myself included, begin to awaken in the later stages of this incarnation, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even in the 80s, and have an easy time questioning their thoughts because something is activating that curiosity. But if the curiosity is not emanating from a desire to awaken, there's really not a desire to change one's mind. It becomes ingrained and it's very difficult to propel through those blocks. So the lower that we go into the density of our fears, the more we're feeling uncomfortable emotions, the emotion of powerlessness, because you're so disconnected from the truth of who you are. So I want to give you a really, really good visual. I've used this in some of my classes, and it's designed to help you see very clearly the distance that we have placed between ourselves and God, so that you can have a general idea of what you have to do to work through the layers of density, the layers of, I'm going to call them untruths, because that's what forms our ego. Ego is nothing more than the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that we have that are opposite to our truth. That's why they're not true. So as loving beings, we are here to extend love. Fear is a block to the truth that you are love. So fear is not real because it is not true. It is not a truth that God created. And only what God created is true, with a capital T. So the fears that we experience are true with a small t to us because we are experiencing them. But when you see fear as an indicator that there is work to do, fear activates the irritation that is an invitation to look at the ways that we have separated from God by observing our ego's motivation. And the ego mind is nothing more than a collection of thoughts that have us think incorrectly. That is it. So we're not going to get rid of our ego, because there's not an ego to get rid of. We are just not going to think with the ego mind. We are going to think with God's truth. That's why we have to understand God's truth, so that we can think, as the Course tells us, with our right mind, with the mind of God. Now I want you to think about this. The right mind means we're accessing the right hemisphere of our mind. Our ego side operates primarily, entirely on the left brain, the left side. It's very linear. It is very much if this, then that, which creation isn't if this, then that, but creation creates with love. So everything that it creates, this activates a that is loving. The ego, because it operates with fear, this that creates that is always going to have a fear-based effect. It's a cause and it's an effect. So the reason that I want to give you this visual is so that you can see how perfectly it matches up with this particular lesson. And that way you'll always have that to fall back on. But before we start with lesson number 35, and if somebody doesn't mind putting that in the chat, for anybody who comes later, just let them know that we're in A Course in Miracles lesson 35. I would appreciate that. But before we go there, I want to hear from anybody who might want to share how are you doing today? What are some of your, thank you, Natalia, for doing that. What did you take away from our last conversation? We're going to touch a little bit on that again. A wonderful, wonderful dialogue between Vern and us sharing. And we have to look at the fact that in our human physical body, there are things that we're going to have to do that are direct expressions, as within, so without. When you are liberating your mind, you want total freedom, you want total sovereignty. And there is sometimes the need where we have to go to the place of give me liberty or give me death. That is how many have gotten humanity to the place that we're at right now, because we have had many warriors who have been very, very clear that death is an illusion. So to die is not to end the soul that we are, but it is to leave a signal. It is to leave a message that one has chosen freedom, has chosen liberty above the body. And the Course in Miracles teaches us that I'm not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. And to reach the level of freedom in the mind that says the body is not what is my reality, what is my reality is my freedom, requires an incredible, I'm going to say, an incredible level of spiritual maturity, because you have to transcend it, the idea that physicality is first and foremost your reality. You have to have gone to the place where you know that your eternalness is free, because it is unbound. Nothing can contain it. And we are at a stage right now in where humanity is, that it's time to ask that question. It's time to be clear. Do you want liberty or do you want death? Because the death of the ego is the death that the ego wants for us is not so much the death of the body, because the ego is terrified of physical death. What the ego is really wanting us to do is to die internally, to die, to let our joy die, to let our individual nature as a child of God die. The ego doesn't mind if we go into slavery. It absolutely loves slavery. But the ego part of us that we are transcending when we participate in conversations like this is the part that you will see in this diagram of the thought system that we have that blocks us from being totally free, to the point that we're no longer attached to our physical self. We are in alignment with our God nature, which is non-physical. So we will touch on that a little bit. You'll see in the diagram. But from that conversation or anything that was shared last week, I want to hear from anybody who has a comment about it. Maybe that information was ruminating in your mind, or you just have a comment or a question about anything else that you might want to pose before we get into lesson 35. So unmute yourself if you have something you want to share. Because that was a great, great dialogue. And I'm so grateful to you, Dr. Byrne, for bringing that up. Yes, Crystal.
There we are. Okay, sorry, I had a bit of trouble for getting my mute button to work. Well, yes, last week, Vern, you mentioned some really good points that reminded me. I've also gone down a martial arts path. I've been involved with karate for many years, and also with weapons, and in the early stages. And I was reminded about my introduction into the martial arts in the 1970s with the head of the association spoke about the most perfect form of self-defense. And he ended up saying, well, the perfect form of self-defense is not to be there. And I didn't fully, I recognized the profoundness of it in one way at that time, but I was still a novice in understanding the true meaning of it. And as I evolved through my spiritual trainings in the few couple of decades after that, while I was involved for over 20 years in the martial arts, it suddenly dawned on me that the true essence of self-defense comes from within. And as the more in tune one is with one's internal inner guidance, the more you know where you need to place yourself. And if it means to confront a situation and to actually be in contact, you will be guided there. But I discovered most of the time I was guided away from confrontation. Or it was to face things which would de-escalate matters. That has been my discovery, because in previous lives, I've been in many, many confrontations. So it wasn't for me to learn how to confront things. It's more how to de-escalate and how to be in tune with the guidance of how not to be there. And I found that quite, I've had many lessons in that regard when I haven't listened. And I've ended up in situations where I knew I could have avoided them had I listened to the nudge that I had. So, yes, the inner guidance is very individual too, because every individual will have their own path of what our inner guide wants us to do at any given time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And to your point, which is also what Vern was saying last week, if you look at the chart and you begin to see that everything is energy and everything is vibrational, the only reason we have confrontation is because we have not been listening to God. We have been listening to the ego. We have been listening to the voice of fear, the voice of greed, the voice of selfishness. So at this level, there is going to be confrontation because you have to confront what is not godly. And many of us are going to be called to participate in that confrontation. But once you hear guidance, like the 5D world that we're going to be creating, the new earth, when you're operating in alignment with love, you are operating with guidance that there will never be confrontation, because the frequency that we will be associating with, because like will attract like, is the frequency of manifestation and creation, not destruction. The ego is a block to extension. It's a contraction. So anybody who is willing to participate in the conversation of give me liberty or give me death, this is what that means. I want liberty to be as God created me. Therefore, I don't mind dropping the physical vessel, because a physical vessel is not my reality. It is part of the density of being in this physical form. So the service to higher mind, to God, to higher self, whatever you want to call it, is truly when liberation begins. So that has to happen in the mind before we can be comfortable with it, with the body. Any other comments there? And then we'll get into lesson 35. Yes, Vern.
I'd like to just respond a little bit to what Crystal says, and that's the last form that I worked with was Aikido. And Aikido basically is a very powerful process. And it's basically you redirect the energy that's coming at you. This is not aggression. This is not pushing what you want to happen. It basically is to put you in a position when you are being attacked, that you do the least harm to the person that's attacking you. You basically use their aggression and their energy in order to redirect that. And to me, that's what is at the heart of martial arts. I know when I started in Crystal, I don't know when you started, but I remember I couldn't even get on the mat for 6 months. They wouldn't let me in the dojo to actually physically get on the mat until I was centered and focused, and I would set off the mat in a position that was very uncomfortable for a long period of time, because that's what it was all about. It wasn't about all of the different things that you see nowadays. It really was about that center. So I would just say, and that is the true warrior energy. The warrior energy is not aggressive at all. It basically is holding your space, because that's what's important. You have to hold your space. But as the energy is coming at you, you redirect it. Now you can do that not just physically, but you can do that emotionally and on a mental level, on many different levels. So that's why I believe that that the real teachings that's there. I will say something about what's happened to me since the last time we were here. I'm experiencing things in what I call real time right now. Many of these things that we talked about. I went to reapply for a concealed carry again. I didn't realize that you have to do it every 5 years. And so it's been, years since I went back and had it done again. And so I went to apply again, and now it's going to take me 60 days 60 days to get that done. And that's a long, long time. It used to take maybe 10 days maximum, whatever. Now it's 60 days. And they're going to want, and the forms are unreal. And so it's starting already. I'm already encountering that process that's out there. The other thing is I've got a good friend of mine that said they're in the process right now, and you can check, anything that I say, I can normally back up pretty strongly with information, solid information, is that the vaccine, you're going to have a vaccine pass in order to fly. You've got to prove that you have gotten the vaccine in order to fly. Domestically, here, foreign, doesn't make any difference. And that is like right around the corner. They're in the process of working on it. In Congress today, right now, during the hours we're meeting right now, they're working on the Second Amendment to get rid of it. They're working on this, the mandatory vaccine, all of that stuff in real time, right at the second that we're meeting. And a lot of people think that, oh, it's going to come maybe someday, or, in the future sometime. No, it's happening right now. The key is, I believe, is to be prepared. In other words, not from fear, but from awareness. And because if you are aware, then you can be focused. And when you're focused, you can come from a higher level of both understanding and action. But I just wanted to just share that, because I could give you a list, and I'm not going to go through it right now, but it's happening right now. And I've been watching the hearings. I record them, and then I might get up at 2:00 in the morning and watch them. But boy, when you see, and you out of the mouth as they're talking, you can actually see what they're saying in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, not filtered through some news agency or whatever. And when you hear it, I'm telling you right now, I can't believe that more people are not really, really, really upset right now. So I'll stop there for now. Thanks.
Thank you for that share. And the reason there are not more people who are more upset right now is because there are still too many people who are unaware that our apathy, which is a very low frequency. Let me see, where's apathy down here? Apathy is a very low frequency. It's just above evil. It's just above, blame and destruction. The energy of apathy is so intertwined with a lack of self-esteem, with a lack of self-worth, with a lack of self-knowledge. And when we are apathetic and we let somebody else run things, it is really because our mind has been so disconnected from God, has been so disconnected from self-worth, that we literally give our power away to one who will take advantage of that power and use it against us. And so just wanted to mention that so that you understand where apathy lands.
One more thing is that this is as of this morning, about 7:00. This is from the Department of Defense. Okay. Our U.S. Department of Defense, over 39% of the military are refusing the vaccine. 39% of our current military are refusing to take the vaccine. That's a fact. That's right from the Department of Defense.
Good. So another thing to what you and Christo both said, if you pay attention to who uses force, you will see that it is always guided by egoic minds that want to control. There is never any force being used by anybody who operates in alignment with truth. All you have to do is look at the level of war, the level of peace agreements that past presidents have participated in. When you pay attention to who is willing to go to war, it allows you to understand the mindset that we're coming from. You cannot create peace by starting wars. Having a strong military is sufficient deterrent, which is no different than being prepared as a martial artist with the weapon of knowledge within. So if you have a military that is strong, that sends a signal that is sufficient to create peace. But to go into action to hurt another, it is not an act of peace. It is always going to be an act of vindictiveness, an act of vengeance. That's what it is. That's not love. That's not God, and that is not where humanity is moving. We're moving towards the ability to connect, to communicate from a place of awareness, of understanding of who we really are, and that inside of us is the ability to create peace through understanding, through dialogue. And so, all right, thank you both for that wonderful share, because it ties directly to what we're going to be talking about here today. So lesson 35, this was the directive in the shower today. Lesson 35, my mind is part of God's. I am very holy. So I'm going to start by reading this information first, and then I'll start doing a diagram. So today's idea does not describe the way you see yourself now. We do not understand that we're part of God, and our mind and God's are connected, and we do not understand that we're holy. We just simply don't understand that. It does, however, describe what vision will show you. And the Course in Miracles wants us to understand that what the eyes see, that is not true vision. True vision is what the heart knows, what the third eye sees. True vision is an awareness when we tap into God's mind and we are seeing things from the perspective of God, from that high view, from the top of the mountain view, not the small perception that we get when we are seen only through our eyes, because our eyes can only see what is directly in front of us. It is difficult for anyone who thinks he is in this world to believe this of himself. And the reason it's difficult to believe that we are holy and we are in God's mind and we connect with God's mind is because we have been conditioned since we were little by those who wanted us to not be aware of the truth of who we are, that God is out there on a cloud somewhere, that it is separate from us, that we are not connected to God. So it's very difficult to believe that our mind is a part of God's mind. Yet the reason he thinks he is in this world is because he does not believe it. Course in Miracles states that this world is a creation of our ego to create the experience of separation from God. Now, you have to understand what the Course means by this world. Does not mean this earth. This world is the world that we believe in, the world of governments, the world of two-party system, political system, the world of external medicine, the world of hierarchy, the world of money. That world that we have made agreements in consciousness, albeit low frequency consciousness, that is the world that the ego has created, and that blocks us. When we see the bank, we believe money comes from the bank. When we see the government and we watch, the programs on TV, when we watch the inauguration or we watch the trial, when we see it with our eyes and we see the Supreme Court out there, we see what's happening out there, that's the world the ego has created and wants us to focus on. The earth that God created, the planet, has a very high consciousness, but it has low consciousness people on it. So what we're doing is we're raising our consciousness to begin to see the earth in the way that God created it, as a planet for all of us, with food for all of us, fish, fowl, plants, fruit trees, everywhere. Everything that humanity needs to be sustained was gifted to us on this earth. The world that the ego has created is a world of dividing countries, of creating barriers. God didn't create countries. God didn't create France. God didn't create America. That is land that people who have moved from one place to another have called it their territory, claimed it, made themselves kings, queens, presidents, whatever. And from that time on, we have created a world that is overlaid on top of the earth that God created. So the Course in Miracles asks us and this is very, very challenging for people at the beginning of studying the course. You have to have a pretty good level of spiritual maturity to understand this, that we're looking at everything from two perspectives. What the ego has made, which is a veil, to what God has created, which is eternal and permanent. And everything the ego has made is temporary. When the ego creates a monarchy, it's temporary. Monarchies come and go. Anything that comes and goes is temporary. Anything that God creates is what's permanent, and we have to cultivate the vision to see that. The reason we keep repeating patterns of destruction is because we're operating in the world with information from the world, always using the ego mind, which always operates from the past. So it always repeats. The ego has nothing new to share because it doesn't create. It just regurgitates. It's like a Xerox machine. What you put on it, it copies and does it over and over and over again. Ego does not learn from its lessons. It doesn't learn because it's not curious. Only a soul is curious and wants to see things from God's perspective. So when it's telling you here that the reason we think that this world is real is because we don't believe that our mind and God's are one. We don't believe that we're holy when we see all this craziness in the world. The only way to change the world that we see and convert it into a new earth is to align our mind with God's. Paragraph 2 says, you will believe that you are part of where you think you are. That is because you surround yourself with the environment that you want. So those who are moving to a higher frequency, we are surrounding ourselves with like-minded people. Those who are operating at the level of curiosity and beginning to move through their awakening, they gravitate towards people who will meet them there. Those who are anger and in hate, they connect with those who are in anger and in hate. Those who are in despair and apathy and blame, they connect with those who are at that frequency. Misery loves company. We all understand that. So when you begin to awaken and you begin to become self-aware, one of the first things that happens is as you begin to get clear about what your ego is saying inside of you, you begin to realize, oh my gosh, that's what the people I hang out with say. Little by little, you will want to begin to move away from those frequencies because it's no longer the truth that you're operating from. But we believe that we are part of the world that we're seeing because it's the world that we keep giving power to by saying, yep, you are the real world to me through our participation in that environment, in that conversation. Sentence 3 says, and you want it to protect the image of yourself that you have made. The image of ourselves is part of this environment. Our image as a scholar or as a teacher of this or as a PhD or as a mom or as a homeless person or as a janitor, we have an image that we protect that matches the frequency that we operate from. And we're going to talk about that image in a little bit. So what you see while you believe that you are in it, in this world, in this environment, is seen through the eyes of the image. This is not vision. Images cannot see. So we have projected an image of ourselves. So let's say my image, not too long ago, I was a East Cobb, which is a suburban Atlanta area, an East Cobb mom with an image to maintain. I was at the time married, 2 successful corporate people making a lot of money. I wanted to, I had an image. I had to have the big East Cobb house. We had to drive the kinds of cars that successful East Cobb people drive. Everything was about maintaining an image. I couldn't see the truth of who I was, nor the truth of anybody else, because the image that I was maintaining created a veil before my eyes that did not allow my heart to feel another. My mind was scanning, my eyes, physical eyes were scanning to make sure that I was looking the part so that I matched my environment. I didn't want to be the one with the least in East Cobb. I wasn't the one with the most in East Cobb. So I made sure that I stayed at a level that was satisfactory to me. And so I was always climbing that ladder, climbing that highest point in my image. And that image blocks you from the vision of knowing what truth is. So let me keep going. Paragraph 3. So the idea for today presents a very different view of yourself. By establishing your source, it establishes your identity and describes you as you must really be in truth. Who is our source? Is our source God and truth with a capital T? Is our source the ego and a small t truth, the truth of the image that we have made up? Again, temporary. Nothing that the ego makes is ever permanent. So we will use a somewhat different kind of application for today's idea, because the emphasis for today is on the perceiver rather than on what he perceives. So I'm going to take you to look at yourself. We are the perceivers of the world that the ego has made. We are also the perceivers of the world God has created. We need to begin to perceive the two distinct ways that we can operate on this planet, because while we're in the world and of it, we are participating in the low frequency game of victims and bullies. When you align as a perceiver of the world that God created, then we begin to align with the frequency that assists in the creation of the new earth. And to assist in the creation of the new earth, you need to see what is not of the new earth, because we have to make a deliberate decision. This is where free will comes in. We willingly, freely descended into the egoic world and made it. We have to willingly and freely rise into a whole new way of perceiving things. So I'm going to take us into the mind of the perceiver, which is our mind. Before I do that, let me just mention a little something here. The Course in Miracles has 365 lessons to correspond with a lesson a day to be done in the span of a year. It does not recommend that you do more than one lesson a day, especially the first 200 lessons, because they're about understanding psychology, your psychology, the perceiver psychology. And because our perception of ourselves is backwards to God's perception of ourselves, the Course, it can be very daunting for a mind that has not been trained in understanding that everything that we view as the world out there is not true. It's changeable. It's not true with a capital T. It's a true experience that we're having, but it's not true in and of itself, because it is made up. It's made up by low frequency minds. So the Course gives us these lessons to do. This particular one, I'm going to just read this part. So for each of the 3 5-minute practice periods today, in this particular lesson, as in many lessons, the Course gives us short practice periods. And this is 3, 5 for 5 minutes a day. You practice this exercise that we're going to go into later on. And then there are longer practice periods, which you spend 15, 20, 30 minutes a day doing a particular lesson. So in this one, it says that we begin by repeating today's idea to ourselves. My mind is part of God's I am very holy. And then we close our eyes and we search our mind for the various kinds of descriptive terms in which you see yourself. You include all of the ego-based attributes which you ascribe to yourself, positive or negative, desirable or undesirable, grandiose or debased. All of them are equally real, because you do not look upon yourself through the eyes of holiness. So let's go to the diagram. I want to show you how our mind gets conditioned. Now, the Course doesn't say this, but I'm going to share this information so that you can have a better understanding of where we're headed. Think of the mind as having 3 parts. There's the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, which is below conscious awareness, and the superconscious mind. So we're going to divide the mind into 3 parts. And again, with a diagram, it's going to make perfect sense. So I want you to establish God's mind as the foundation from which we emanate from. So In God's mind, we have been created. So we are literally laying on a very solid foundation. If God is thinking us into reality, we are here. If God ceases to think about us, if God ceases to imagine us, we disappear. We would not be part of creation. So we have to be thought first by the Creator. We have to be imagined. So we are going to create, we're going to put God here as the foundation that we emanate from. So what I want you to do is we're going to use this chart, but we're going to turn it around so that you can see how the ego has created an upside down, backwards world that we all think is real. And I mean, it'll shake your mind. It'll just rattle you when you begin to look at things the way that the Course in Miracles explains it. And then for whatever reason, the way that it comes to me visually, which is what has helped me be able to awaken, I'm going to say relatively quick compared to so many people. Not that we should be comparing, but my awakening, as I look back, was very, very fast. And I believe it's because I was part of my role in this lifetime was to come in and be a teacher that simplifies the awakening process so that people can ascend out of the egoic mental prison that we have. That's just my role in this lifetime. I like it, by the way. Okay, so now that we've turned this upside down, so if the foundation of our beingness is on God, we are founded on that which is love, joy, peace. It is the essence of what a baby is all about. And you guys know I went to Colorado this past week to help my daughter, who is expecting my first grandson, to get my grandson's room ready, and his name is Ryder. So I spent a lot of time just feeling into this energy of this soul that is going to come into the planet, even though I know he is coming in as a master who's been here many, many lifetimes. We've already had that dialogue. We were sorting out baby clothes. We were sorting out tiny, tiny little diapers, tiny little toys. And that helped me remember the innocence that we're all born with. So we enter into this world in pure perfection. That's that word right there. We are perfect, pure consciousness. My grandson is going to come into the world as we did, without a thought in his mind. He is going to bring a heart that is going to be wide open, because the mind hasn't been trained to think thoughts that begin the process of self-protection and manipulation. So our foundation with God is the foundation of love and connection, of oneness. So let's talk about what happens when my grandson Ryder comes out into the world. The first thing that he is going to experience is going to be separation from his mother. Then he's going to see mother and father as something other than itself. So the very first thing that we have to understand that happens to us is the idea of separation. That is really what creates the foundation of the ego. And that is what the Course in Miracles calls the greatest obstacle to peace, to the peace of knowing we are one with God. And it is the obstacle to peace because while we are in a state of separation and we believe that to be our reality, we are going to be in self-protection. And if you're in self-protection, it's only for one reason. You're in fear of being, annihilated. You're in fear of being destroyed. You're in fear of death. Because if I don't have mom to feed me, I'm going to die. If I don't have dad to protect me, I'm going to die. So make sure that you really, really grasp that the only thing that stands between us and God is the thought of separation. That requires that we focus on bodies. My body, your body. This is, my and parents, the first thing that they're going to do when that baby is born is, does it have 10 toes? Does it have 10 fingers? So the focus and separation is of the body, and that is the foundation of fear. I'm separate from God, now I got to take care of myself. That is what forms the foundation of the ego, and it is what is laid directly upon the foundation that we are in the mind of God. Now, why this is so important to understand is because God has created us free to believe whatever we want to believe. So we are inside of a mind, loving mind, that says you can believe whatever you want. And when you're done playing that game, that's okay. You're going to drop the body. You're going to remember there's nothing to fear, because you're going to come to the place of realizing oneness, because there is no separation when we are operating at the level of energy. So nod your heads and let me know if that makes sense. I can keep going. Okay, cool. So what's going to happen to Ryder, which happens to all of us, but with Ryder, it's going to be a little bit different, as it is with any child that is born to conscious parents. Conscious parents are going to remind the child that they are one with God. They're not going to teach them that God is outside of them. A conscious parent is going to remind the child that only they know what is best for them. They're not going to say mommy knows best or daddy knows best. They're going to have very deliberate language, which I have with my second child, my youngest child, not with Lauren, the mom of my grandson. Lauren, I was unconscious when she was little. With Spencer, I was becoming more conscious. So my work with Spencer was to remind Spencer, only you know what's best for you. Let me give you two options. From my experience in the world, this is what I think you might want to do. Option A, option B, but you have to feel inside of you for which option feels best for you. So that's my role with Ryder, is to remind him, you have an internal guidance system. You listen to that voice within. So what is the first thing that happens to us after we experience the separation when we're in unconscious relationships? We begin to create an identity based on who we think we are, and who we think we are gets established pretty early on, depending on how our parents treat us. If you have a parent who is very loving, very caring, and there for you, you cultivate a really good sense of worth. Well, that's not a block to the truth of who you are. But if you have a parent that does not encourage you, or maybe you grew up in foster care and you're one of many children, they don't have attention, can't give you the right amount of attention. Maybe you grew up in your own home and it's very abusive. The next thing that gets planted as a block to who you are is a lack of worth. When you don't know who you are, when you're not treated as the holy being that you are, when you're not treated as having a powerful mind, which is what this lesson wants us to understand, you think that you're not good enough. You lack self-worth, not good enough. You begin to believe that you don't matter, especially if there's other children around and parents have to go put attention on other kids. They don't have time for you. Maybe you're the last baby, maybe you're the oldest child and they're busy with the other ones. So this idea that I'm lack of self-worth, I don't matter, I'm not good enough. When the ego mind begins to be programmed with this information, it's moving further away from the truth of who it is. So it begins to create strategies. The ego mind is all about, I am separate, and because I got to protect this body, and now it's all up to me. By the time you're 2, I do it all by myself, which is another thought. That's all about me. Very early on, it's all about me. So we begin to cultivate this sense of pride up here, the line of pride, where it's all about me. I got to do it all by myself. And then we begin the process of manipulation. We begin to manipulate mom and dad. We begin to scream to get what we want. We begin to stay quiet to get what we want. The process of manipulation, it is strictly for survival. But when our mind from a very young age is filled up with information that it's me, got to do it all by myself, I got to take care of me, we enter where everything is about protection. That means we have to go into control mode. We have to control what others do, manipulation. Children learn that at a very young age because it is tied to the survival of the body. It is tied to separation. I can't trust you. I can't count on you. And the more that we move away from being able to know who we are internally, if we don't have people who are conscious, who help us learn how to trust our voice, when you don't trust your voice, you absolutely do not trust anybody else. And in that, I do it all by myself. We cultivate a sense of greed, of selfishness. It's all about me. What can I get? And we can only cultivate when you're in that level of that mindset, of that egoic pride. You can only go one of two ways, because this is the way the ego operates. The ego operates only as a bully or a victim. Two sides of the same coin. So the bully would be the child whose parents tell them, you're going to do things my way or the highway. A bully, a child who's been bullied by an older sibling, maybe even a younger sibling that's more aggressive, a parent, anybody that forces the child to do something that it doesn't want to do. That child experiences a sense of victimization, but it understands internally, we know that we lost our power to a bully who took it from us. So the game of victim and bully are intertwined. And so a bully will always find victims, because it's a balancing act of, I take your power, you gotta give it away. That's why abusive people find partners who allow themselves to be abused. I wouldn't put up with that. If one partner, anybody, I actually had one boyfriend who punched, he was about to hit me and I moved my head and he hit the wall. That was the last time he ever saw me, because I didn't have that energy that I needed to be with somebody who was going to be abusive. Now I entered into other abusive relationships, but it was more emotional, but I was able to see where my victim bully frequency was, because I was able to observe at some point in the journey. You've got to be willing to see that victim bully energy is the way the ego operates. So you have to see where you have been a bully, and you have to see where you have participated in victimization. Humanity operates in this energy. We can't escape it, because it's the world that the ego has made. Guess why people don't stand up? People don't stand up because they become victims. And the mindset of a victim is a very difficult mindset to break through, because we have been conditioned to believe that victims should be taken care of by others. So we have permitted this idea of somebody else taking care of me. The government takes care of me. So-and-so should take care of me. My husband should take care of me. That mindset is very difficult for people to say, yeah, I'm a victim, because we believe that victimization is something somebody did against your will. At the level of the Course in Miracles, there are no victims here. We are willing participants in the drama unfolding before us called humanity. Every soul ascends, arises from consciousness willingly to have a human experience. So how can you have free will and will yourself into having a body and having an experience of separation from God, and not be 100% responsible for the experience that you're having? You cannot understand that until you are far along enough in your spiritual journey where you understand that embracing where you act as a victim is a source of liberation from the victim energy. But to experience the victim energy as not defining you, you also have to look at where you've been a bully. because it is in the balancing of those two energies that appear to be opposite and appear to you are one or the other. We remain polarized. Our mind remains divided. It's somebody else who did it to me. This is why all of us are Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All of us have to look at those two sides. And that is, to me, a hallmark of somebody who is moving really further along in their self-awareness, because without that acknowledgement, I chose to be here and I'm playing both roles, you cannot wake up. It's not possible. So the ego gets pretty solid. We have that, we're protecting and controlling, and then we go on to create our identities about who we are. I'm a whatever. So for a child, I am smart, I am stupid, I am capable, I am funny, I am beautiful, I am whatever. Those begin to be the thoughts that create the identity that we carry. All right, Christo, see you later. Those are the thoughts and beliefs that create our identity, that create who we think we are. And what happens is when the mind is filled with who I think I am, the ego is always chasing the identities that we think we are, and wanting to make those be our reality. So let me stop here, and I want to hear from some of you. What are some of the beliefs that you grew up thinking about yourself? So I grew up believing that I was my grandmother's favorite, and because it's what grandmother always said. So I had a sense of at a very young age of being this favorite child. But I also grew up with my father leaving when I was 10 years old. So about the same time I'm hearing my grandmother say I'm this wonderful favorite child, my father leaves, and now I am believing that I'm an abandoned child. So all of the thoughts that we pick up in childhood have two sides. So I was the bully, the best, the favorite child, and I was the victim. Dad doesn't love me, he abandoned me. So just think back to when you were growing up. What were some of the I am statements that permeated your consciousness? And please unmute yourself and share those so that we can have more examples than just me here. Lorelei, why don't you share some of your beliefs?
Okay. Well, I was just, I was sort of like my father's favorite and my grandfather, my mother's father. And so, I was also really special, but I would hide because it was sort of like I got so much attention. It was kind of overwhelming a lot of the time. So,
I understand that because I had 3 sisters and they hated that I was grandmother's favorite, because we tended to be with grandmother more, of all the grandparents, with grandmother more. And she was always doting on me. So I carried a little bit of guilt. So I am guilty was one of my, I don't deserve this. That was in the back of my mind, more of a thought. So I don't deserve. Did you have that thought also?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. And because I picked up on the fact that my father doted on me, and I already picked up that there was something with my parents that wasn't quite, so I was in the mid, I don't know what all that translates to, but I'm giving you the answer to the question as I heard it.
Well, but this is really important, because I want to show why we have conflicting beliefs in our mind. And it's important that we get a couple of examples, because I want you to see how that affects us, because the whole world operates in this dynamic. Right. So who else doesn't mind sharing something that you might have? Thanks, Kat, for joining us. Have a wonderful day. So who else can share an example of, yes, Fiona, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for such a wonderful talk. I really resonated to that example. I was my father's favorite, and I grew up with a mother that was very jealous and an older sister that, for lack of a better word, hated me for being born. So I grew up with feeling like I was very special, and at the same time, I'm the cause for a lot of people's pain or discomfort.
Yeah, so if you're the cause of pain, that means that, you know, you bring problems to the world, and that's a heavy load to carry as a child. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Linda, you could fill up numerous pages with this, as I know. Yes. So I have an employee who needs you. Okay, so we will then catch you later. Several people will catch this as a recording. So let's take one more example. Maybe let's hear from our guys. John or Vern, can you share what were some of the mixed beliefs that you might have grown up with?
Yes. I was the oldest of four, and so I was always, you know, told that I had to be responsible, and that I was, you know, I was like a deputy parent to some extent, and that was both the good news and the bad news, because in some ways I know I bullied my siblings, but hey, you don't know what it's like. You don't have to deal with this, you know. So don't go running off on your bike without telling me, or I'll break your neck, kind of thing.
Yes, I totally, completely understand that. So you had the ability to be responsible and had a certain amount of freedom in that, because you got to maybe make some rules or make some decisions for the rest of the kids. But so that could make you the bully to the kids, but your parents were your bullies because they needed, so you became victimized by the parents because you probably couldn't go play until everybody else picked up their toys, or you probably couldn't do something until the siblings got put in line. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And that is what forms our egoic mind. So let's go ahead and thank you all so much for these examples. I want to show you how this breaks down into the way the mind operates. So we can see the conscious mind, we can see the subconscious mind, and see the superconscious mind. So I'm going to say that every single one of us desires at some point in our lives, we make the decision, especially when we are out of high school, when we're entering into the real world, we want to do life the way that we believe we should do it. And that becomes I'm going to say, the height of the ego's arrogance. This is what I want. For me, I want to get married. I wanted to have children. I wanted to have a successful career, make a lot of money. So I had my idea of family and money. That was basically it. All right, so let's see the way the mind, well, actually, let me ask some of you. Why don't you unmute yourself and tell me when you were ready to go out on your own and be independent, what were the things that were driving you? What were you really looking for? Fiona, since you shared, and then John, I'll ask you next. When you became independent, go ahead and, yeah, you're unmuted.
Yeah.
What did you want when you finally, what did you want to do or be or have?
I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be a famous actress and singer. And that would be my way of showing the world I'm who I am. And yeah, to get the love and acceptance I wanted.
There you go. We have to buy our way into it. What about you? Thank you, Fiona. What about you, John? There we go.
Okay. I don't know if I'd say famous, but yeah, that same kind of, I wanted to have notoriety. I wanted to be successful, and I wanted people to want to talk to me, yeah, and want me to be involved in whatever they were doing.
So you wanted to be important, matter.
Important, exactly. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to be someone who had access to people that most people didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what we want to be, do, and have. That's what happens to us is we grow up, we discover all the things that we're supposed to learn in school. We go to college, we get trained, we get educated, and then we want to go out into the world and we want to be somebody. We want to do something that makes us somebody. And we want to have the notoriety or the money or the accolades or whatever it might be that goes with that. So play with me here. Use your imagination. All right, so look at my little pyramid that I drew for a very important reason. To understand the way the mind works, you've got to recognize the conscious mind is about 5% of the thinking that's going on inside of us, roughly 5%, if that much. It could probably be a lot less than that, depending on who you're talking to, but we'll give it 5% here. Then what is subconscious to us is about 95% of our thinking, of our mind, of what's going on in the background. So this is the conscious mind, subconscious mind. So then what's the superconscious mind? Well, it's very simple. The superconscious mind is the mind of God. These are just psychological terms that we're going to be using here. So superconscious is what the foundation of our mind. The conscious part, if you look at this drawing, I hope you can see the whole board there. If you look at this drawing, we operate 5% conscious mind is all the things that we need to do to be able to be, do, and have whatever it is that we've been programmed to be, do, and have, whatever it is that we think needs to happen in the world for us to be somebody, for us to be okay, for us to matter. But what runs us is what's below the surface. If you think about this as an iceberg, what is below the surface is the stronger, most powerful part of the iceberg. Ships don't I can't think of the word. They don't wreck because they hit the top part. They can see the top part. Well, the reason ships have problems with icebergs is because they hit the bigger part. It's massive. It's huge. You can't see that part because it's below the surface. When we meet people, this is why we connect with people on a superficial level, because we tell them the job, oh, I have this job. This is what I do. I'm famous over here. This is how much money I have. It's one of the reasons my former husband was able to woo me, because immediately off the bat, he's telling me how much he has. And of course, I wanted a husband who would take care of me. So you start talking about the superficial things. And at this level, egos are meeting egos, and the conversations are never really deeply meaningful, but they're sufficient to attract each other, to connect one another at a level of superficial consciousness. But what happens after a relationship gets going is what's below the surface begins to come up. Because when you feel that people can see your mask, they can see that you are talking about how much money you have, but below the surface is, I'm not responsible. I'm the cause of the pain and suffering in the family. I'm the favorite one, and you better like me better than anybody else. So, if you like somebody else, then I'm going to be jealous. There is an ego with a victim and a bully mentality that is going to make sure that it does what it needs to do, which is to protect itself, and it will go into control. It will manipulate the relationship. It will let that person know what you need to do to keep me. And if you grow up, as we all do, you're special to somebody, but you're the source of pain and suffering to another, your mind is split. We are run by a split mind that is founded on the belief, I need to do it all by myself, so I don't need you, which is basically people who can detach. They can be in a relationship with you, but they're really not there because here come the lawnmowers, Wednesday. They detach. They can cut you off. They can cut themselves off from their own hearts. Or it's the opposite. Remember, the ego operates in opposites, become codependent. I can't do all this by myself. I need somebody else to do it for me, because I grew up in a, not me specifically, but some people grew up where I had to do everything by myself when I was little. Now I want you to do it for me, because I'm tired of having to do all this all by myself for all this time. Actually, I'm not too far from the board. Let me put my headphones on so that you get less noise from the outside. You hear me okay here? Shake your head for me. Perfect, thank you. So the mind that is the ego mind, that is not operating with a sense of worth and a sense of awareness that we're all the same, all equally worthy sons and daughters of the creative source, all beautiful beings, all absolutely powerful, perfect, came in pure perfection, loving, caring, who want to share, who operate from a state of grace as we did when we were little babies and we were closest to the truth of who we are, have 95% of their mind filled with old stories. This is why the ego operates only from the past. So this information gets created from the time that you're born until, let's say, by the time you're, a teenager. You're always doing whatever you're doing is a decision that is based on a past experience. If you were abused as a 3-year-old, or you were left home alone as a 5-year-old, and that impacted you, that made you afraid, that made you scared, this is what runs us. So we are run by what is below our conscious awareness. We're not aware of what's back here. So the mind is so powerful. But here's the thing. You can be focused on wanting a family as I did, but if you have insecurities, you're going to wreck your family. You're going to wreck that relationship. You're going to have to destroy it, because if you believe you're not worthy, you do not deserve a happy family. Because how can you have the story of I'm unworthy or I don't deserve and then have what you want? The ego will make sure that you self-sabotage. And this is one of the most challenging, there's so many things that are very challenging for us to understand, but this is one of the most challenging things for us to get, which is why it requires an incredible amount of spiritual maturity. We create our own reality. When we enter the spiritual new age movement and we want law of attraction and we want to create our own reality, we only want the good stuff. And then we wonder, why did I get all this bad stuff? Why did I attract the job that fired me? Why did I attract the bankruptcy? Why did I attract the divorce? Well, we attract it because it matches the frequency of what we believe we deserve. And how else are you going to see what needs correction in your own mind, but to have that irritation that's an invitation to see our ego's motivation. So humanity right now, it's in the middle of this great awakening, because most of us are totally dissatisfied with the 5% that we've been asking for, because it's not coming. COVID, so many losses of jobs, so many losses of things that we thought were good, things that we thought we had worked so hard to be, do, and have went away. People now have the opportunity to go inside and enter into quiet to find out, well, what drives me? I've talked to so many people who have said that COVID gave them the opportunity to see their thoughts, their beliefs. It made them so completely, Lorelei, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, absolutely. So we have a powerful, powerful manifesting machine called the mind of God. We just don't know how to use it because we have filled it up with nonsense. We have filled it up with things that are not true about us. We have filled it up with the idea that what happened to us defines us, instead of what happened to us is just what happened to us. It's just an experience that we had. I don't have to be defined. I'm not defined anymore by my father abandoning us, having it to be because there was something wrong with me. My father left because he found another woman. So good for him. That was between him and my mom. My child's mind, and nobody was conscious enough to help me not take it personally. But a child takes everything personally. It thinks it is the cause of all of their parents' sufferings, because when we're little, all of us suffer from our parents telling us, clean up your room and then mommy will be happy. Do your homework and daddy will be happy. Eat your broccoli and then mommy will be happy, or grandma will be happy, or babysitter will be happy. We grew up believing that everybody was happy if we changed our behavior, which means that we become adults and we can only be happy if you change your behavior. And if you've got two people who need the other to change their behavior, you got two people who don't love each other and are attempting to control the other for personal self-protection. You need to be this way and then I can be happy. Because our ego is about manipulating the other so that you don't take personal responsibility for what's inside of you. And when you begin to take personal responsibility for what's inside of you, we are going to go through a two-phase journey. One is to see how we created all of our suffering, and the other one is to learn how to fall in love with ourselves again. Two very, very painful journeys, because when you see how you created your suffering, you have to take responsibility for the bully that you've been, for the victim that you've been. And when you go into the self-love journey, you're going to see how full of love you always were, but didn't let yourself feel it. And that's very, very uncomfortable to realize, oh my God, I've had the slippers on all along. I could have gone home to love. I could have had joy my whole life, but I blocked it. So let's see, who else? Oh, thanks for joining us, Vern. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, so let me stop there for a moment and let me just ask you guys to unmute yourself and let me know if this is making any sense, if you have any questions. Yes, Lorelei.
So no wonder The Wizard of Oz has resonated with me so deeply in terms of that recognition on some level that it's all been here. However, I've covered it up, and certainly my journey has been one of excavating and removing this layer and removing that layer. And so I just love when you use that analogy, because it connects me to that light inside me, that playfulness, but the profundity of the truth of that it's all here. And if it wasn't in my backyard, I never lost it to begin with.
Exactly. And the movie The Wizard of Oz is such a perfect movie because it speaks to, we got to find our mind, we've got to find our heart, we've got to find the truth of who we are, and it is never outside of us. The wizard is not outside of us. But we've been conditioned to go to a wizard, to go to a holy person, to go to a president, to go to a somebody, the head of the WHO, World Health Organization, for our true medical information. So we have been conditioned to always go outside of us. And this journey to awaken is to become your own guru, to become your own wizard, because you are the one who is creating your own reality. So as we begin so look at what I'm going to do with the drawing. As you begin the journey where things begin to fall apart, they begin to fall apart at the surface level. Our family falls apart. You might lose your career. You might lose your money. You may no longer be important because they plaster your page on, People magazine with a story about you that wrecks your how the people see you. So the first thing that begins to fall apart is the superficial stuff. Then you can go below the surface, because while the superficial stuff, while you're juggling and you appear to be managing it, you think you got things under control. But when you begin the journey of excavating and you begin to go below the surface, the first thing, and look how it happens to be here, you got to look at that you're responsible. You're the one responsible for your own healing. You're the one responsible for your own joy, your own happiness. And when you take full responsibility, that's when you have to face your pride and begin to use instead of your ego pride, this is your self-love pride. Love yourself enough to say, I gotta go discover all the things that block me from the truth of who I am. We've got to enter into the cause of the pain. I am the cause of the pain, not because mommy and daddy told me that, but because I'm a powerful creator causing my own suffering, I have to go into a healing journey. I have to go do the inner child work. I've got to correct my mind from the stories that I created as a 2, 3, 5, 10-year-old that was immature, who was raised by adults who were unconscious. We have to correct that. We have to turn it up, right side up. They were the ones who told me that I was being a pain to them because they couldn't hold their own happiness, their own joy. They made me dependent on it. And when I misbehaved, as children do, because I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, they told me I was a pain in the ass. So does that make me a pain in the ass? No. That means that they can't handle themselves, or that they didn't teach me how for me to entertain myself. So if I become a pain in the ass as a child, it is really truly because there are no conscious beings that are helping me direct my energy, my life force, my creativity. So then you move through these things that I'm not deserving. What? I'm a child of God. We're beginning to realize that not only are we deserving, because we're not the favorite and special one of God's, all are equal. We begin to go to the journey that everybody deserves to be forgiven, for they know not what they do, because we're all equally loved and created by this creative source. We have to face our ego. Nobody can move to the deeper parts of healing until they see their ego mind. If you cannot see the thoughts that you have and notice that they are bipolar, you've got the ego, I'm a victim, and you've got the ego that I'm a bully. Until you see those two sides, oh, you talk so nicely and everybody thinks you're so lovely. And then you catch yourself being horrible, and you watch yourself belittling somebody else or yourself, until you're horrified by the conversation in your head that is like a pendulum swinging from one side to the other. You talk that you're so spiritual, but yet you live in fear. You talk about you're a healer and you channel healing energy, but you're afraid of COVID. You talk about, I create my own reality, but now you're mad at the driver that wrecked your car because you got into a car accident. Well, you created the reality of the misery that I'm going through. Either you create your own reality or you don't. When you can see your bipolar craziness in your head, you enter into the next layer. The next layer is where you have to see how you've been trying to control external forces. You've been trying to control everything out there to protect yourself, until you enter into the realm of realizing that your power comes from getting curious, not controlling. You will not be able to move below the line of your egoic pride and have the courage to go into neutral, and then begin to look at, do you really need to do all this all by yourself? No, you don't. You begin to question the thoughts that are below the ego mind. You begin to see how much you matter, because you're not made of matter, you're made of energy. You begin to recognize that, of course, you're good enough, because you're made of God. God is good. God created everything and said it is good. And you begin to cultivate a relationship of self-love with yourself. This is deepening yourself into your spiritual practice. This is going down where you let go of that thought of lack of worth, because you begin to discover the worth of who you are. You begin to discover that until you decide, I am worthy of freedom, I am worthy of acknowledging my sovereignty, I am worthy of being in alignment with God, I and the Father creative source am I. Until you make the decision that you are worthy, you will not do the hardest thing of all. And that is to begin to face your greatest fear, that you're separate from God, your fear that you're a body, your fear of death, your fear of the guilt that you carry. We all carry it. Guilty that I created all this suffering. Guilty that I participated in the control of humanity. We have to face the guilt. It's one of the obstacles to freedom, according to A Course in Miracles. We have to face the guilt that we have for creating our separation from God, when all along God has been our foundation. But we thought it was separation because we saw other bodies. So when the eyes, the physical eyes, are trained in seeing bodies, we participate in otherness until we come to know that, stop believing that I don't matter and begin to discover that I'm made of energy. And we cultivate a relationship with the essence of who we are. We cannot come to discover the truth of who we are. We are the essence of the creative source. We are the essence of love and light. That needs to be unleashed, but it cannot be released while we operate in a tiny 5% use of our conscious mind that is blocked with superficial stuff. I mean, when the conscious mind is all about getting and protecting, I got to get more money, I got to get more accolades, I got to get more, promotions, I got to get, then you get it. You got to protect it, put, security systems, fences, stuff to protect your stuff, protect your identity. You can't go to the place where you're going to discover your freedom, because all of that superficial stuff binds us, tethers us to superficial stuff. To come inside and come to know the truth of who you are, you have to be so willing to cut the cords of attachments to what anybody thinks about you, cut the cords of what people think about you, what the government thinks about you, what your family thinks about you. Recently I found out, kind of funny. Here I am, supposed to be a spiritual teacher, and I just recently realized that a couple spiritual leaders in this area in Atlanta had unfriended me on Facebook. And it's really funny because I had to sit with that. It's like, the old Laina would have taken that personally, but Laina now, I just have compassion. I forgive them. When we don't see that every one of us is a brother and sister, we stay in a state of judgment. Judgment is all about protecting our image, protecting who we think we are so we can be right about that. We cannot accept people where they are in whatever belief system they are. I know that they unfriended me because I'm not afraid of COVID. I am not taking a vaccine. I absolutely supported President Trump. I still support President Trump because I believe in freedom. I believe in sovereignty. I believe if I create my own freaking reality, my reality is about freedom. My reality is about healing, comes from within. So I have learned to walk my talk because I live in this world, but not of it, because I know that my mind is part of God's and I am holy. I practice what I teach more and more and more. And when someone has to unfriend me because I practice what I teach, I am just reflecting to them something that they're not. So I get made wrong so that they can be right. That's what we're all doing to one another. Anything we cannot be with is because we can't forgive it. And we can't forgive it out there because we haven't looked at it in here. So we have a journey to come inside and realize that our final obstacle, that separation from God, that fear that God's going to be upset because I misused my power, that guilt that I created all this misery, we have to forgive ourselves. Because once we forgive ourselves and recognize everybody's doing the best that they can with what they've got, everybody is operating from the level of consciousness that they're at. Who would you want to befriend or unfriend? Who would you want to hate? Who would you want to be mad at? Course in Miracles says everybody is either extending love or calling for love. We need to call ourselves into loving ourselves. When we learn to love ourselves and we're willing to look at all of these layers, we untether our soul. It's a beautiful book written by, now I can't remember his name. I got the book back there. Michael Singer. Beautiful, beautiful book. Untethering our soul is to listen to the voices of the ego, the voices of the roommate in our head, to learn how to manage our own internal energies, our own frequencies. What's happening in here is a result of energy that we just don't know how to be with because our mind got filled with distractions. So we learned to numb our energies. We learned to numb our discomfort. Now we're being asked to face that, unpack it, free yourself. let go of the baggage that we've been carrying, empty out our mind so we can free ourselves. Let me share the rest of this exercise. So now that we saw all of those, the part where you have to sit and you state, my mind is part of God's, I am very holy. And then you allow the ego-based attributes, which you ascribe to yourself. We put them on the board. I am, I'm scared about this, or I'm special, or I'm not smart enough. Have to be the responsible one. I hate being responsible. When you look at all of that, then we go to paragraph 5. So in the earlier part of the mind searching period, you will probably emphasize what you consider to be the more negative aspects of your perception of yourself. Yeah, we initially start looking at all the bad stuff. Toward the latter part of the exercise, however, more self-inflating descriptive terms may cross your mind. So try to recognize that the direction of your fantasies about yourself does not matter. It doesn't matter that I was abandoned by my dad. It doesn't matter that I was grandmother's favorite. Those things really ultimately don't matter. Illusions have no direction in reality. They are merely not true. I'm not special and I'm not worthless. Those are not my truth. I carried that dichotomy inside of me my whole life since I was itty bitty, special to some and unworthy to others, so unworthy that they would abandon me. What did I do? I made sure I abandoned every relationship. Before they abandoned me, I would abandon them. Oh my gosh, because I was so special. I deserved somebody that didn't abandon me. You know how many relationships I abandoned them, even though I really wanted to be with them, but my ego was telling me, get rid of them before they get rid of you. What craziness is that? So paragraph 6. So a suitable unselected list for applying the idea for today might be as follows. So the course gives us some ideas that we can come up with our own in the beginning. Our ego will resist this exercise because it's not going to want you to say these things about yourself. But here are some examples. I see myself as imposed on. I see myself as depressed. I see myself as failing. I see myself as endangered. I see myself as helpless. I see myself as victorious. I see myself as losing out. I see myself as charitable. I see myself as virtuous. And of course, that's just a very small sampling of what could actually be said in our own mind. So you should not think of these terms in an abstract way. They will occur to you as various situations, personalities, and events that are going to cross your mind. Pick up any specific situation that occurs to you. Identify the descriptive term or terms that you feel are applicable to your reactions to that situation, and use them in applying today's idea. After you have named each one, add, but my mind is part of God's. I am holy. Because you're special doesn't make you any holier. Because you are unworthy doesn't make you any more holy than you already are. We have got to balance the polarity. When we can be with both sides of everything and acknowledge that we are both, we have the potential for both. Yes, we have the potential to be a murderer. Have you killed a bug? Have you trashed yourself? Have you killed your own soul? Have you bashed yourself? That's murder. Even if only in that moment, because that's not to uphold your holiness. So when in our mind, we're okay with both sides of everything, we neutralize them. To move into neutral means that you're no longer reacting. If you are not reacting, you have found the sweet spot. That's where you can go below the ego mind noise. This is what meditation is all about. You move below the noise and you connect with a part of you that is stillness. Stillness is where God speaks to you. And when you begin to connect with God because you're not listening to all the ego nonsense, you begin the process of hearing the truth of who you are as a knowing, as a feeling, as it activates your worth. It activates your sense of wholeness. That's why, meditation is so difficult to learn, because you got to maneuver all that chatter in the mind. And many people will do a kind of a loop around to get to the quiet, but leave all the chatter in their head until you excavate all of that and release it through neutralizing it by acceptance. Yep, I have done that. Yep, if not in this lifetime, in another lifetime, I'm sure I was a murderer. If not in this lifetime, in another lifetime, I am sure I did horrendous things. If not in this lifetime, in another lifetime, I am sure I was the most charitable person on the planet. If not in this lifetime, I am sure in another lifetime, we all have the potential to create whatever we want. Why? Because we're using the mind of God. There is no limitation to how much of God's mind we can use, because there's only one mind and we share it. That's what the Course in Miracles teaches. We're all accessing the same mind and thinking we know it all. Well, you can't know it all because it's an infinite mind. So we've got to clean up our own mind so we can access the all-knowing mind. And until we are comfortable saying, I don't know anything, because when you wiped out your ideas about yourself and others, then you begin to enter into God's holy mind, where you begin to realize the magnificence of everybody. Yes, Fiona, so glad that you joined us. I know you've got to go to work. Oh, Lisa, such a beautiful, powerful lesson. I had a cleansing cry, a shift and release from some of the, oh, I am. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so grateful that this was helpful to you. Oh, that touches my heart when somebody can receive something from anything that I have the privilege to share. So the Course goes on to tell us that, we need to relax into these exercises. And when something occurs to us, we work with that. Don't force it, because if you try to force this exercise, the ego goes into resistance. So don't spend time digging out with effort. Neither force nor discrimination should be used. So as often as possible during the day, pick up a specific attribute or attributes you are ascribing to yourself at the time and apply the idea for today. If nothing particular occurs to you, merely repeat the idea to yourself with closed eyes. The idea, but my mind is part of God's. I am holy. I am very holy. So that is the lesson that I wanted to share with you today, is that we are holy. We are absolutely holy, holy beings. We're powerful beyond measure. The world today, the surface is collapsing. We need to look what's below the surface. And what's below the surface for humanity is the same thing as what's below the surface for us. We're going to see the egoic world that got created, and it was made with suffering, with pain, with lack of worth, with control, with manipulation, with it's all about me, the greed that has built this world, the suffering that is the result of greed, the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters is all because we below the surface are pretty, evil. We can be pretty evil. And we have to accept that about ourselves so that we can neutralize it. Because when we accept how ugly we can be, we will begin to see the ugliness in others, not to judge them, but to say, hey, brother, sister, that's not who you really are. That behavior is not okay. You can do better than that. You're a holy being. You can do something so much greater. You don't have to be selfish. You've got so much money. Why don't you give it away? Let's begin to call each other out on the truth of who we are. We are holy. We need to know it. I don't know if you guys remember, those of you who are at Unity, about 6 or 7 years, I did a thing with Richard. We passed out bracelets. I still have mine. They were purple. It said, I'm holy and I know it. But it's, the kind of thing that if you don't really practice that on a regular basis, you give yourself permission to become fearful. You give yourself permission to become less than the magnificent, powerful being that you are. And our ego, the world that the ego has made is a tired world. It's just not working anymore. So we have to be willing to face it and say, yep, it got created because we were not aligned to God. We created this mess because we were not creating from blessing. We created from greed instead of grace. And when we can say, yes, I have the ability to do both, but now I'm choosing only grace, then we are awake and can begin to create an ascended planet, a new earth that works for all of us. Because once you realize that we're all brothers and sisters, we're all holy, we're all in the same mind, have the same powers, it's a matter of how we're using it. When we begin to wake up and we realize that, we're going to want to help each other because love will be flowing. All of that was the block to love. This love, that is the love that God has, now can begin to extend itself. We will share it with everybody. We won't be living off of our superficial mask. We will be emanating love, and love brings about creativity, brings about grace, brings about collaboration, co-creation. This is when we can participate in peer-to-peer programs that help everybody. And this is the reason why I love doing what I do, because I get to share ways for people to untether themselves from the lies that the ego mind has conditioned us to believe is true. And the systems that perpetuated that are collapsing, thankfully. But I'm not afraid of that because I welcome it. It's what's liberating humanity. But as Vern was telling us earlier, some of us are going to have to fight for that. It's not for me to take up arms and fight for it, but some will do that because it's what they will feel called to do. My way of assisting humanity and liberating themselves is in helping them understand their mind. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So before we close up, I would love to hear, John, did this help you understand better your internal programming?
Yes, this this class you're doing has been a gift. It really has, and it's sort of like, haven't I heard all this somewhere before? And well, yeah, oh, that's right. And it's like remembering how to remember.
Yeah.
Kind of a situation. But yeah, it's like I feel a little less horrible about myself.
Good.
I mean, that's and I guess it's only in small steps that you can, walk a mile.
Yeah, exactly. One step at a time. Thank you for saying that. We have to be compassionate with ourselves and be kind, and recognize that it took many, many lifetimes to cultivate that sense of separation. And it's going to take a while to release that, to erase that, to eradicate that thought system from our mind. But our willingness does it.
I think sometimes the hardest person to be compassionate to is yourself.
Yeah, I know.
It's easier to have compassion for all the other people in the world because that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But lack of self-compassion is one of the sneakiest ways that the ego tricks us from liberating ourselves. So you have to override that part of you that doesn't want you to have compassion for yourself, because until you decide, hey, I'm worth it and I know it, you don't really know who you are. You're still operating under the illusion that you are separate and insignificant. And it is an illusion. It's not true. It's not how God created you. And that we have to override our own mind, because it is full of misinformation. That's what it is. Well, I am so grateful that you guys are here. And if you enjoy this, please share it. Share it with anybody. Share it on your social media. So that more people can have access to this information. And look forward to seeing you guys next week if you join us, and invite more people. I mean, it's surprising to only have 15 or 17 people join us. So help me spread the word. Just share this, because don't you want everybody else to know this? Well, I love you all. Please unmute yourselves, and let's make sure that we all say goodbye and have a wonderful day. Lorelei, Linda, Dondra, those of you, John, thank you for being here, and everybody who already left, so grateful for your presence.
Thank you so much, Laina. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.